if you look at the economy, I want to do this a lot to go through here. As you pointed out, we could spend the better part of the day talking about his New Year's message. But let's look at the economy to start with. From Xi's perspective, how do you assess the top line concerns or problems that he's facing with the economy? How would you lay them out? How would you list them?
Well, from his perspective, things aren't that bad because he's putting China on a war footing. He's manufacturing. He's making sure that China is self-sufficient. He's doing all sorts of things. And from his perspective, I think he probably likes it. Problem is that from a point of view of economics, he's driving China into the ground. And that means that if he doesn't go to war soon, he's going to lose the ability to go to war. And that is something that means he can take us by surprise, because I'm sure at some point he's going to see a closing window of opportunity.
Driving it into the ground, how? And I know you know that I'm a brilliant economist, but talk to me like I'm not. Use smaller words.
Okay, first of all, what he's doing is he's incurring a lot of debt. China has a total country to GDP to total country debt to total country GDP ratio of, I think, around 350%. You're in the danger point where you're getting to 200%. So China's in a very difficult position. He's got to have a debt crisis. And he can't really resolve it. His position is he's going to try to increase investment. In other words, factories, high-speed rail lines, all those other things. The problem is that he's driving prices down in China by this excessive production. When you drive prices down, you have deflation. Things get cheaper. The reason, and Xi Jinping is quoted by the Wall Street Journal as saying, don't the Chinese people like it when things get cheaper? Well, of course, as consumers, we do. But the problem is, when you're a consumer, you don't buy things when things get cheaper because you're going to wait 6 months or a year until prices are lower. And so what we're seeing is a large portion of the Chinese economy, consumption, is now, I think, shrinking. And China is now in a debt deflation sort of cycle. We should know about this because that happened to us in the 1930s. So the way to put it to Mike Baker, the economist, is China is looking at the Great Depression.
Is there a legitimate middle class that exists in China?
Yeah, it's big. It is very big. And it has a lot of money. It's not spending. And the other thing about the middle class, it's getting poorer. About 70% of the wealth of the Chinese middle class is property. Property prices are plunging because there's too much of it. Give you an example of how much is too much or how far they're in it. Last September of 2023, a former senior statistics official in China said that there were enough vacant apartments to house the entire Chinese population of 1.4 billion people. Although this official said there are other estimates that show that there are enough vacant apartments to house 3 billion people. Now, the law of supply and demand doesn't work exactly in the same way as a command economy like China's, but it does apply. And that means property prices are going down, which means that 70% of the wealth of the Chinese people is shrinking. And a lot of Chinese people are not very happy about this situation right now, which is the reason, and here this is for Michael Baker, the economist, that's why we're seeing record amounts of both legal and illegal capital flight from China. That doesn't happen when you're growing at 5%, as Xi Jinping claims, which is his target. It happens when your economy is about zero, which is where China is right now, because of the deflation, and you got the debt overhang. So this is a pretty grim situation. It's not insoluble, but it is insoluble if it's countries led by a Maoist, and that's where China is right now.
Is there a primary recipient? I mean, where is most of that capital flight going?
A lot of it is, well, that's a lot of it's going out to Hong Kong, which is part of the People's Republic, but it's outside of China's currency walls. And then from there, it goes all over the world. It goes into the United States, goes into Europe, goes into Southeast Asia. But money is leaving in really big numbers. Wall Street Journal did a story not too long ago in October, which said that by their estimation, and these numbers are very rough because China doesn't tell us the truth, but the Wall Street Journal said that the amount of illegal capital flight in the 4 quarters ending in June of 2024 was $256 billion. That's a pretty big number because that's in addition to the legal capital flight. So we're seeing money leave China, which is a real indication. And we're seeing all sorts of very strange phenomena in the Chinese financial markets right now. So this is a problem that is getting worse by the week. And as I said, it's not insoluble, but it is when you have someone who is ruthlessly determined to pursue misguided policies.
This may sound like a simplistic question, but well, those are my favorite kind of questions.
Those are great questions.
In a place like the U.S. or other countries that have democratic elections, if the economy is heading south or if people are feeling it in their pocketbook, there's a recourse, right? I mean, you go to the polls and you vote the bums out and you bring in a new administration. In an environment like China right now, if there is a certain sense that the economy is getting worse, if people are feeling it in their pocketbooks, what's their recourse, if any?
That's a really important question. And there are a couple of things they can do. One of them is they leave. We have an unprecedented number of Chinese migrants from both our northern and southern borders. Some of those people are dangerous elements, but most of them are just people who are desperate to live in a free society. The other thing that you do is you keep money offshore, and there are a number of illegal but simple ways to do that. The other thing is you buy gold. Gold is basically capital flight for the poor because they can't get their money out, but they can get their money out of renminbi denominated assets, local currency assets. So you buy gold. And because gold has an international value. I mean, the price is set by global markets, not by inside China. Yeah. So there are those things that you can do. But the other thing you can do is, and this is really fascinating, you just opt out of society. You got a lot of young middle class Chinese who are really privileged, who have just said, I'm out of this country. And what they can't leave, many of them, but what they do is they quote unquote retire. That's the phrase that's being used now. They retire to the countryside and they become farmers. Or they just do nothing. They just sit in their rooms and opt out of society. So those are the ways that people are reacting. There is unprecedented gloom in Chinese society. And the one place we can see this is plummeting birth rates because people are so pessimistic, they do not want to raise a child in China.